There's a trainer in Cleveland. I truthfully don't know who the person is, right? But it sounds like she's been training for a little while now. She's been in the game for a little while. Doesn't have that much of a social media following and stuff like that. But basically, I got a text from a good friend of mine, maybe Saturday or Sunday night, something like that.
Okay.
Sent me some pictures of a dog. And it was like there was like 2 or 3 individual photos, and it looked like it was like a black German Shepherd mix or something like that. And the first picture was just your typical before picture of the dog, like before it went to training and stuff like that. And the second one was a picture of like a guy holding the dog. And the dog had like an abrasion on the side of its muzzle. Like it was a pretty big one. I mean, it looked like it was maybe like 2 inches.
Okay.
It was hard to tell. It was kind of like a blurry picture and stuff. But like there's like an abrasion on the side of the muzzle where it looked like it almost looked like somebody just like wiped the skin off like that.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just very hard to tell what exactly it was. Like honestly, it didn't look like anything I could have guessed what it would have been. You know, that would have caused it, obviously. But an abrasion nonetheless. And basically they said, oh, my friend sent their dog to a board and train with this place. And, I guess the dog was supposed to be there for 3 weeks or something. And my times could be off here. The dog maybe was supposed to be there for 3 or 4 weeks. And maybe halfway through, they picked the dog up because it had that abrasion and I guess maybe like a puncture on them or something like that somewhere. And basically was like, what do we do about it? How do we report this, that, And, I didn't have any context of the situation. I was like, well, like, I don't really know what happened. The pictures are very hard to see.
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously get the details.
Yeah, for sure.
At that point, obviously, if you get into like reporting things and this and that, like, there's, I'm sure 9,000 different ways you can go about doing that. But nonetheless, it the next day I saw on Facebook, there's like some reposts going around of those same pictures and like a write-up that was basically like, sent my dog to this board and train at X place. I actually don't even remember the name of the place, but some dog training company that was in like the greater Cleveland area. And halfway through, I get an update picture, and when I zoomed in on the picture, I was horrified by what I saw, and I saw the abrasion on the nose, and they told me that it was from her rubbing her face in the mud and then it being dirty and it ripping the skin off. And then I was told that, another dog she was going after another dog that bit her. And then I was told this. And then ultimately, obviously, she went to go pick the dog up, and the owner of the company that she was originally talking to was not there. And it was just some young kennel girl that was there that handed the dog off to her, and she wasn't there. And basically, avoid this place. This horrible things happen. This, that, blah, blah, blah. Right? Bad experience, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? And not discrediting any of that by any means. Like obviously, when you send your dog somewhere, you expect them to be in the best of care, obviously. Right? And you expect to not have your dog come back with big ass abrasions on them and stuff like that. Right? I completely understand all of those things. And person is completely right to obviously be upset about the situation. Right? But it sparked a conversation in my mind, and it sparked this kind of like conflicting message that was going on in my head as far as like, I don't even know exactly like how to break, you know what I mean? Like how do we balance out, right? Like making sure dogs are in the best of care, right? And like expecting our dogs to be like properly treated for and stuff like that, right? With dogs are dogs sometimes, and sometimes things are going to happen. And how do we effectively convey that message to people in a way where they're going to be understanding of stuff and understand that, there are situations where dogs do get dinged up, right? There are situations where dogs do get into altercations with other dogs and have a little bite on them or scratch on them or something like that. And how do we properly communicate those things to people without, one, scaring them away from like ever leaving their dog somewhere, and two, minimizing the risks of those types of things happening?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's kind of the biggest thing with it, right? Like, when I looked at that at first, I was like, well, that could have been a number of things. Like, it didn't look like anything that was owner induced or person induced by any means. Like, I don't think that, that abrasion on the nose was from this person like beating the dog or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
The problem is, and this is me looking at this from the outside in, not having much context aside from the side of the owner of the dog, right? The communication from the trainer or from the owner of the kennel is so essential with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know, it's that's one big thing I saw right off the rip is like, it sucks because anytime something like that happens, like I look at my dogs, for example, right? And there are so many times that they do stupid fucking shit, and particularly like if I'm gone, right? There have been times I'm gone, right? And Vinny, for example, gets a crate sore on his back hip, right? Like he spins in the crate a lot. And if I board him, if I go out of town, like it's very common that I come back from boarding and that crate sore is like fairly irritated. You know what I mean? And sometimes maybe a little bit bloody, right? A little bit open and stuff like that. And it's one of those things where like, I understand him. I understand that he's going to be in a crate a little bit more frequently when he's boarding, when I leave him away. I know there's a higher probability that he's going to like injure himself because of that. You know what I mean? And I kind of accept that, right? Like Vinny also, actually, most of my dogs all have stuff like this, right? Vinny has gotten into altercations with other dogs before, right? He's got a fucking bite on his front shoulder from like a fight that he got in with another dog, right? That still is like kind of a big dinged up scar there, right? Yeah. And again, like at home, something like that would never happen, right? He's in a cushy house. He's with dogs that obviously he knows and gets along really well with. But when I board him or if he's at the facility all the time, the amount of opportunities for something to happen are like 10x higher.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I kind of assume that when I send him to a boarding kennel. You know what I mean? Vera, another example, I'm pretty sure tore her ACL a couple of weeks ago, right? It was very frequently or very soon after I picked her up from boarding as well, right? And, she's getting a little bit older. She plays really hard with the other dogs. Yep. And I could tell, when I got her back, she was just a little tired and slow and stuff like that. And then the next day I let her out and she must have twisted it just weird and overexerted herself. And I think she tore her ACL. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm saying all these things because like from the side of one owner of the kennel, where I know how my dogs are being cared for, right? I know they're in the best hands with things. Yeah. But also dog owner of like, I'm leaving my dogs there and going out of town knowing exactly how they're being cared for. You know what I mean? I understand that the more that I do that, the more possibility there is going to be that things happen, And unfortunately, when it comes to board and train kind of situations, right, a lot of these dogs that come into our care for board and trains are coming into our care because of bigger issues they're having. You know what I mean? They have a lot of anxiety. They have a lot of aggression. They have a lot of reactivity. They have a lot of whatever, And most of them, because of those issues, they kind of live within their bubble at home. You know what I mean? True. They live in a bubble where basically, quote unquote, nothing bad is going to happen, but nothing good is going to happen either because they're so sheltered. Yeah. You know what I mean? And a lot of times when you send your dog off to board and train, forget us for a minute, just nationwide, globally, if you send your dog off to a board and train, your dog is over the course of a month going to experience on a daily basis, on an hourly basis sometimes, so many new experiences that they've never seen before in their life. And they're going to respond in so many unforeseen, unpredictable ways. And occasionally that's going to create stress. Occasionally that's going to cause an altercation. Occasionally that's going to mean they come into contact with surfaces or plants or freaking whatever, you know what I mean? That can cause a problem. Yeah. Right? And I'm not justifying this by any means. Don't get me wrong, right? Like we're going to get into the fault on the owner of this kennel in a minute and kind of break that down and stuff like that as well. But it is not uncommon that, it's like sending your kid off to daycare, you know what I mean? Or kid, on recess that scrapes their knee every 4 seconds because they're being a fucking psychopath. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Stuff happens. Yeah. Right? And again, I'm not sitting here trying to justify like you should expect that your dog is going to get beat up and stuff when you send them off to places, right? But we have to understand that stuff happens sometimes. Yeah. And Which is why the first time I saw that, I was like, I saw it and I was like, oh, that sucks. Like, it sucks that dog got that abrasion, and I would want to know what happened that caused it, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. But when I was reached out to, like I said, to basically right away be like, how do we report this? I was like, well, I don't know what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to tell you, go report it to call the fucking police. All this bad shit was happening because I don't know. Yep. You know what I mean? But getting into the issue, as business owners, right, as owners of kennels, as attendants at kennels, right, a lot of this comes into the responsibility of the staff that's caring for these dogs as well. It's our job to keep people as in the loop with those types of things as possible. And because we, as people that work in the kennel, we look at things like that, and let's say this dog realistically did, I don't know, like literally like dug its nose into the mud and scratched its nose on like a tree branch, pulling its nose out. You know what I mean? Like that could have been something that happened, obviously, right? We look at that and, if that were my dog, say Vinny did that outside, I would look at him and be like, you fucking idiot. You know what I mean? Like, say he did that in the backyard right now, I'd look at him and be like, you are such a fucking idiot. And I would clean it out and we'd be past it. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be a big deal, right? If it started getting infected, I'd take him to the vet or this or that, but like, it's not that big of a deal in my eyes, right? But, right? That's because it's my dog, right? And I saw it happen, and I know exactly what happened, right? And I know it was just him being an idiot doing it. So when it comes to your clients' dogs, if it's something like that, right? If it's something like we see commonly, dogs lick their knuckles, right, on their paws. They'll develop like irritation on there, just as a like stress thing, right? Or a boredom thing, or like any number of things, right? Or they start developing irritation on their butt or on their stomach. We'll see sometimes because they're laying on harder surfaces, or they're going out and about and doing downstays on concrete and stuff like that, right? Or anything, right? Any sort of irritation like that where we know with 100% certainty this is just a self-induced thing by the dog, right? And that there's nothing that we did to cause this, and it's not a big deal. It's going to heal. You know what I mean? The dog is going to be fine. It's our job to triple extra make sure we keep people in the loop on those types of things, and have the empathy to be aware if that person is irritated about that with us, even though we didn't do anything about it. Hey, listen, I understand. I completely get why you're irritated about this, right? We don't want this to happen just as much as you don't want this to happen, but you have the nice conversation with them about the reasons why it happened, the reason why it's more common those things will happen when you send your dog away somewhere, the reason why it's not that big of a deal, putting the ball in their hands of like, hey, how do you want to handle this? Some people are very, very strict about like, they get even a scratch on their dog. They want their dog to go to the vet to make sure it's clean and have antibiotics and stuff like that. You just, communication is everything. This kind of stuff is basically, long story short, what I'm getting at with this, right? So I'm saying all of these things, one, to let people know that are listening to this that may have sent their dogs to boarding trains in the past, right? Or getting ready to send their dog to boarding trains or something like that, or just board their dog or whatever it may be. Stuff happens, right? And you gotta understand that to some extent. You know what I mean? And then I'm saying this for all the trainers that are listening, or all of the owners of kennels, or all the employees, to just basically have some empathy with these situations. It sounds like this trainer shot herself in the foot because the second that, one, it sounds like she didn't let the person know until the owner found out themselves through seeing it on a picture that was sent to them, right? Which is mistake number one, right? Mistake number two is when she was confronted about it, it sounds like the trainer got a little shitty because she was pissed off that this lady was like maybe kind of accusing her of maybe she did something, right? And then mistake number three is she wasn't present at pickup to be able to damage control the situation.
Yeah.
What the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, come on.
You should have been there.
Like, you screwed up, right? Yeah. So you need to be the one there to have that conversation with them and handle it. And because you didn't do that, that's your reputation on the line now. And that got shared around all over the place. And, I don't know if it's going to kill you or you're going to go out of business over it or anything like that, but it ain't going to look good.
No, not for a while. You're going to take the hit.